Hi everyone, today we have Hussain Bandukwala. Hussain is an old friend of mine and we worked together almost 15 years ago at a boutique management consulting company. And in many ways, I guess you could say we're cut from the same fabric in terms of how we think about how to solve problems and the importance of really understanding how to deliver on complex solutions. And so Hussain is an expert in program and project management and setting up PMOs and frankly in just getting things done and advising organizations on how to do so. So I'm really excited to have him here with us today. And what we're going to really focus on today is speaking about what are the challenges you are seeing with delivering products and initiatives. And we're going to talk about that with Hussain, and we're going to delve into different facets and nuances, and hopefully come away with some insights that folks that are listening on can immediately take away and start implementing in their organizations to be sincerely, helpful in the day-to-day work. So with that, I'll pause and just turn it over to you, Hussain. If you could just share a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you focus, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely, Christian. Well, Christian, firstly, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate being here. Just as a quick intro, I'm the founder and CEO of Parwaaz Consulting, which is a strategic advisory firm focusing on project management. Our goal is essentially making sure that organizations are delivering projects as effectively as possible. Some of the ways to do that is to help organizations set up PMOs, optimize them, help organizations with their end delivery teams with workshops and trainings that are very bespoke and customized and very practical and relevant. So not all the textbookish type of stuff, but rather stuff that you can really apply to work immediately. At the same time, a lot of organizations are also looking at opportunities where they want to groom their PMO leaders to take their organization to the next level. And that's where I provide PMO leadership support as well. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor. LinkedIn Learning is LinkedIn's online education platform, and have a couple of courses on PMOs there as well.
Yes, and we're going to add a bunch of links to that in the show notes so everyone can take a look. So Hussain, why don't we just jump off from one of the quotes that I have from you is PMOs are the master facilitator and grand collaborator. They are the Switzerland of the company. Can you share with me what you mean about that and how that really speaks to, helping deliver on challenges on products and initiatives?
Absolutely. So when PMOs are done well, Christian, they are essentially, they have a vantage point like no other in a company. So, PMOs, and again, just for people's context, what I mean by a PMO, when I refer to a PMO, it's a role or a function or a department within an organization that's responsible for all things project management. So the way, you have an IT department for all things IT, accounting department for all things accounting, finance department for all things finance. A PMO is essentially a role or a department within an organization that takes care of all things around project management, making sure that that there are standards for managing projects, that there is some governance and accountability, that there is some level of execution support, and perhaps even sitting at the strategy table with the executives, making sure that the right things are happening at the right time, the right way, by the right people. And so when PMOs are really at that strategy table, and they have a view on, okay, which departments have what needs from a project perspective, which functions or which regions can provide the right amount of resources to help facilitate that, which stakeholders have the challenges that are burning deeply, that they really need to get some of these initiatives rolled out. That sort of breadth and depth is something that a PMO usually will have if it's, again, like I said, done right and well appreciated within the organization. And when they get to that point, they essentially are able to go ahead and facilitate conversations between those departments to make sure that we are addressing everyone's needs with the right amount of equity and objectivity, using data points, some level of empathy, and good level of relationship building. And so, based on all of this, I've I do believe that the good PMOs and the great ones are essentially neutral to the organization, enabling fact-based decisions very, very objectively, and therefore they are the Switzerlands of an organization.
I really appreciate that, Hussein, because it comes up for me in the sense of there's always a lot of different stakeholders. There are always a lot of different priorities. And having an entity within an organization to keep clear eyes with respect to all of those things and to help connect the dots and to help deliver. But also it seems like there's a real big role here because I just want to pick up on one of the words you shared there was empathy. Between the different departments and such on getting things done, because inevitably in an organization, there are some things you have to say yes to, and there are some things you have to say no to at a time, and that's tough, and it's coming up in my mind that the PMO can serve as that neutral arbiter to be like, look, right now, based on the overall priorities and how this aligns with the strategic objectives, this is the direction we can practically go to get something done that will help push us forward. What dawns on me with all of this, though, is that there's a very critical aspect of getting things done, and facilitating and such, which seems how shall I say it, just a little bit different than what has been shared in the past or what I have heard about folks, from a PMP perspective. I think somewhere you said something about someone said to you that Monday.com is their way of looking at the PMO. And so there's a very big difference between scheduling stuff, and project plans and all that stuff, and actually, the art of actually getting things done and moving them forward. Can you get a bit more into that and how folks should look at, the specific role from a very tangible, hey, this is what they're going to need to do. This is what their day-to-day is going to look like. Because I guess I'll pause and just say that sometimes I find this to be a very new concept for folks, and there might be some folks in an organization or a group that is de facto taking this on, and they're not called that as a
right.
And so if you could just shed some light on that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because a lot of people do get confused between what a project manager is and what a PMO is, or what a PMO leader does. And I usually think of relaying it in such a way where there's a bit of a comparison, right? So, for those folks who are, very familiar with the IT world, I think of, your VP of IT versus your best software developer, right? You can't have, there's a huge difference between the two. Your best software developer is going to be focused on making sure that whatever projects or whatever work that's been given to him or her is done as best as possible, right? But for VP of IT, the role is much more varied, much more broader, and in many cases much more deeper. They may be software development, maybe just one piece of the pie for them, right? So, and not just for the role for that one, not just overseeing that one best software developer, but the whole team of software developers, plus database managers, plus architects, plus maybe business analysts, plus infrastructure team, maybe even the security team, and so on and so forth, right? That's just from an IT perspective. If you take a look at it similarly from a finance perspective, you could have a director or VP of finance versus some financial analysts, and their roles are really, really different again. So it's exactly the same for a PMO leader versus a project manager. A project manager is essentially one person responsible for one or multiple sets of projects. And their goal is to make sure that those projects are done on time, on budget, on delivery, on scope, with quality. And if the organization is mature enough, then not only just focusing on that, but also focusing on getting the business outcomes that the projects are set up to be. But for the PMO leader, they're not just making sure that that project manager's work is getting done in as best as possible and helping him or her remove the roadblocks that are coming their way, but the entire suite of project managers and program managers and portfolio managers. And not just that, but also making sure that they are all working in tandem, in concert, in a certain organizational specific way, and not that everybody's doing things their own way, because that essentially results in chaos when the whole point of having a PMO is to bring out the calm within the organization, right? So making sure that that team is delivering on those things and making sure they're doing it in a way that is transparent, that is accountable and predictable. That's the role of a PMO leader. In addition to that, once this is done well, and the PMO leader has earned the right of and respect of other stakeholders in the executive leadership within the organization, they'll be probably invited to come in and help them navigate through all the different challenges to figure out what are the right initiatives that they should be working on. So like you mentioned earlier, every organization has just a finite set of resources. That's people, effort, money, time. And you can't say yes to everything. So what is it that you say no to? PMO leaders can help all the stakeholders figure that out.
Yeah. Two things that I'm picking up on from what you just shared there, Hussain. One is bringing the calm to an organization. It seems like a really nice thing, I think that is that's probably an understated outcome from a lot of this. It's like I'm imagining that at all times, at least for any organization that's trying to, really stay ahead of things or continue to innovate or progress, there's always the sense of, you're on one boat and you're trying to prepare for going to another boat. That's the transformation, right? And so things are wobbly while you're on that, and you're trying to make that step. And there has to be that calmness to figure out how to do that in a way that doesn't have everyone just fall overboard.
Exactly.
And I think that there's really something to be said about that skill and that manner. And in some ways, it's coming up for me of the strategy of delivery, right? Because it's like, I'm just thinking of the PMO at the executive table there with all of the executives, helping to navigate the complex set of decisions that need to be made to help execute on an overall transformation, a strategic transformation, and having that, buy-in at the broader level, where the CFO will be like, this guy really needs to be here to make sure we don't screw up and waste a bunch of money, right? Or the CIO might say that, or whoever is at the executive table is like, we need this insight on strategic delivery there, right? And also the sense of trying to keep things consistent from a project and program delivery perspective, so you could have similar governance, so you can have a sense of calmness and everything is in absolute chaos. Hussain, what have you seen as some some of the biggest challenges with actually getting that PMO structure set up. If you were to say, hey, here are the 3 to 5 things that I would really recommend that folks think about when setting up their PMO. And I'll say this, that I'll put it this way, that these are, if you could couch them in like broad terms of like, here are the functional sets of, hey, these are the things we need to be thinking about. So you can at least have those in your mind. And they might not go into this pretty perfect PMO that an organization has, but it might come into other groupings or organizational structure with an organization.
Well, I mean, it may not be 2 to 5, Christian, but I can just start
with there's a lot.
one core piece that hinges all of this together. And what I believe is the core differentiator between a successful PMO and a not successful PMO. And that is change management, right? If you have to think of setting up a PMO or even optimizing it as an exercise in change management, right? Because the biggest reason why PMOs don't work, or aren't successful, is because they haven't gotten the buy-in from either the executive leadership or the some of the stakeholders, right? So when it comes to change management, when you're setting up a PMO, you have to think about the fact that these stakeholders need to be first engaged, then their feedback and their inputs need to be understood. Their challenges around project management need to be grasped upon. And essentially, as a PMO, your role is just to solve for those and nothing more. As you start solving for those in a way that is, organizationally acceptable, and when I say that, what I mean is you're not going faster than the organization. You're not, ruffling the feathers right off the bat. You're not shaking the boat per se as much as you need to. And the change that is being brought out with the PMO is in a way that is easily digestible by the people. So once you start with that, they will start coming to you asking for more, right? So change management is the number one piece that every PMO leader needs to think about. The second thing that the PMO leader needs to really think about is there is no one size fits all PMO. So you may have set up a PMO, multiple times in your previous life, or you may have worked within a PMO or multiple PMOs in your past life. Treat this as a new PMO setup as a completely new endeavor. Don't just assume that all the things that you've done, you just start bringing them in and things will go hunky-dory. It's not how it works. You still have to go to the stakeholders to understand what their challenges really are. Understand why those challenges exist. Get their opinions on what they think should happen to solve them. Understand from them why hasn't it been solved so far. And going through all of this essentially helps build that relationship. So not only are you getting relevant information that you can use to build your PMO, but you're also building strong relationships with your stakeholders. And when it comes down to rolling out the PMO, these stakeholders aren't like, oh, well, this PMO leader is coming and just telling us what to do. No, this PMO leader is actually coming in and helping us solve the problems that we've been trying to solve for all this while. So that change in perspective just changes everything. The third thing that I would think about is treating PMO stakeholders in 3 ways. To me, there are 3 types of PMO stakeholders. One is the type of stakeholders that the PMO usually reports into, so your executive leadership, etc. The second type is stakeholders that the PMO works with, so your peer leaders, your departmental leaders. And the third set is the stakeholders that report into the PMO. So those are your project managers, program managers, analysts, coordinators, etc. And that relationship doesn't necessarily have to be direct. I know there are a lot of PMOs where project managers are indirectly reporting into the PMO versus directly reporting to them, and that's totally fine. But you need to treat them as your stakeholders too. And what usually happens is PMO leaders only focus on the first set of stakeholders, which is your executive leadership. Hey, what does the CEO want? What does the chief strategy officer want? What does the CFO want? What does the VP of IT want? But then they don't look at the other sets of stakeholders. And when they ignore them, especially the last set, which is your project managers, program managers, these are the people who are essentially going to help you execute the vision of your PMO that you're really working so hard to build. So it doesn't matter how grand your vision is. If you don't have buy-in from your project managers and your coordinators, etc., it's all wasted. It's not going to happen, right? So that's something that PMO leaders really, really need to focus on, right? And I mean, and this one goes unsaid, right? I mean, when you look at any sort of project management aspect, you look at any sort of PMO things, you have people, process, tools always coming in, right? So the order for that for me is literally that: people first, then process, then tools. Don't worry about the tools. Don't worry about the templates as much, right? Focus on the people, then the process, and the tools will follow by themselves. So these are some aspects that I think are, at a high level, that PMO leaders should really think of as they go. And if change management is too much of a buzzword, then really think of it from this way: you need to crawl, walk, run. That's the pace you need to go with, right? And you can't start running, and you can't expect your organization to start running before they're not even crawling.
I like that a lot. It reminds me of something someone once told me: progress moves at the pace of trust.
I love that.
Yeah, it's and I think that as I was thinking about the first aspect of that you were talking about around change management, and the role of really moving at the pace of where the team and the different stakeholders are, and frankly being the one to keep track of where they are not as well, and bringing it up at the right time and the right place to have those challenging conversations, to take that micro step forward, right? Because it comes up in my mind where you might take a bunch of tiny steps, and then that prepares you to take that bigger leap, where everyone's like, oh wow, we've made a big change now, but it probably took 100 small steps to get to that point where you could take that big leap there. And to have that patience and focus to do that, to not ruffle the feathers. I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom there in organizations, but also probably in our personal lives too, that we could probably take from that. And one thing I want to say, Hussain, is that it's dawning on me to look at this and what we're talking about here today, and I'm actually just imagining this of like someone like you coming in and spending 1 month with a team to say, here, let's just get this foundation set, and what a difference that would make for a team, as opposed to going 1 year in trying to sort through this. It really comes up in my mind that could really just catapult an organization forward, right? And I think that comes down to always this idea of investing in that initial set of activities and work that needs to be done to help move something forward. with
Right.
frankly someone who really cares, because you want, it's like you want others to be successful. And frankly, I sometimes think that it's we're moving in such at a time where the velocity is so fast, so high that you
Right.
have to do these things. Otherwise, by the time you're a year or two down, you're like, oh my God, I'm going that direction when I was supposed to be going that other direction. And that's
Right.
all the difference.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the sort of mindset my prospects and clients have when they come to me, because some clients admit that they don't know this and then they haven't done this before, but many clients can very well do it, and I know they can do it without me, but they want to make sure that they are not risking falling into common pitfalls, that they may not be swayed in another direction, so they might benefit from having an outside in perspective. And they can always benefit from someone who's been doing this for multiple clients like themselves, and they can accelerate that journey, right? That's something that is very, very recognizable. And when I speak to someone, I can really tell which boat they're in. And oftentimes they might be very capable and they could do it perfectly even without me. But the challenge that they might be having is that they just don't have the time. They don't have the capacity, right? And this is some of these foundational things, as well as optimizing it or reassessing how they're doing, always becomes a second or tertiary priority. And to sort of bring that out and bring it up front, that's where they start engaging with someone like myself to really bring that to the foray and get it done, and get it done in a way that can help help the growth of their career trajectory, their PMO, as well as the maturity of their team from a linear to an exponential level.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I really do. And I so appreciate all the nuanced things that you're talking about here, Hussein. I feel like we could talk a lot more about this, probably even go into the philosophy of it from a personal
Right.
and professional perspective, which I'd so
Absolutely.
enjoy one day. But Hussein, thank you so much for your time here today. We're going to add a bunch of links in the show notes, and for everyone to take a look at some of the LinkedIn learning courses you offer, and some of the articles that you've written on the topic that can be helpful to folks. And we really hope that this can just be the seed to help folks in doing this within the organization, because I really think that a lot of what you're talking about is so fundamentally important to make the progress that we need, individually, collectively, as a humanity, however you want to put it, to move the world forward, right? And these are the skills of this next century, frankly, that we need to employ to do what we need
Right.
to do, to take on the challenges at hand. So,
Right.
Hussein, thank you so much for your time, and I hope we can do this again.
Absolutely. I love being here, Christian. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, thanks, Hussein. Bye.